You know, we like to think of healthcare as a mission, right? Its whole purpose is to heal people. But what happens when that mission gets a total corporate makeover? When our hospitals start acting less like places of healing and more like businesses with investors who need to be kept happy? Today, we're going to dig into how healthcare has been transformed into this massive money-making machine and ask a really simple question. Who's actually paying the price for all this profit?
And look, this isn't just some abstract economic theory. This has a very real, very human cost. Just take a look at Sumit Kumar's story. He went to a corporate hospital expecting care, but he left feeling, and these are his own words, harassed and looted. I mean, he did everything right, paid his insurance premiums for years, thinking he had a safety net. But instead, he got tangled up in a mess of bogus charges and denied claims that just left him emotionally wrecked. His story is just a powerful reminder that behind all the big numbers and investment reports, there are real people whose lives are being completely turned upside down.
So, how does a patient even end up feeling looted? Well, it often starts with a number that just seems impossible. A number like this, 1,700%. Yeah, a national pricing authority found that's the profit margin some private hospitals were making on basic things like drugs and supplies. We're not talking about a small markup here. This is a staggering figure that really starts to explain that deep sinking feeling so many families get when a loved one is in the hospital. It's the direct link between the emotional pain of someone like Sumit and the cold, hard math of this new system.
And these bills, they're not just full of little typos. We're seeing a clear pattern here. For example, one family was billed for nearly 1,600 pairs of gloves in just 2 weeks. That's more than 5 pairs every single hour. Another was charged for 5 doctor visits a day when the doctor only showed up once. Or how about this? A simple cannula, which costs about 150 rupees, billed at 5,000. That's a markup of over 3,000%. These aren't just isolated incidents. These are strategies to get around regulations. It just forces you to ask, why on earth have these stories become so common? Well, to answer that, you have to look at who owns the hospitals now. And that brings us to the first major player in this whole game, private equity. And let's be clear, these aren't doctors or community health groups. They are massive investment firms. Their business isn't healing people. Their business is making money. And right now, hospitals have become their hot new asset. They are, quite literally, playing a high-stakes game of Monopoly with our health.
And this whole process has a name, corporatization. It's not just about having private hospitals. It's about a fundamental change in their DNA. It's the shift from a hospital being a place with a primary mission to heal to becoming a business with a primary mission to make money for its investors. Suddenly, every single decision, from how many tests are ordered to how long you stay, can be influenced by the bottom line. And just look at the sheer scale of this takeover. Before the pandemic, private equity investment in Indian healthcare was already big. We're talking $3 to $4 billion a year. But after the pandemic, whoa, that number just exploded to $5 to $6 billion annually. Giant global firms like KKR and Blackstone started buying up major hospital chains like it was a feeding frenzy. This isn't just a trickle of cash, my friends. It's a tidal wave of capital, and all of it is looking for a big return. So how do they get that return? It's a simple and honestly a pretty ruthless playbook. Buy, consolidate, sell. First, they buy up smaller hospitals, a lot of them family-run or charitable places. Then they consolidate them into these huge, efficient corporate chains. And finally, usually in just 3 to 5 years, they sell their stake for a massive profit. See, their goal isn't long-term public health. It's a quick, high-return exit. And that creates this immense pressure to squeeze out as much revenue as possible, as fast as possible.
But here's the thing. Private equity can't do this alone. They need a partner to funnel a steady stream of paying customers through the door. And that's where the health insurance companies come in. They're the gatekeepers of this whole system. Which begs the question, are they really the safety net they promised to be? Or have they become a key partner in this whole profit-driven machine? I mean, on one hand, you have the promise, right? The one they sell to millions of people. Convenient, cashless access to care, total peace of mind. But on the other hand, there's the reality so many people face. A reality where your claim gets denied for a pre-existing condition you already told them about. A reality where you find a hidden 20% copay clause buried in the fine print, but only after a major surgery. Suddenly, your choice of hospital is limited to a specific network, and your claim gets rejected because some clerk at the insurance company decides your doctor-recommended hospitalization just wasn't warranted. And all of this creates what you could call a perfect profit funnel. Step 1. Private equity firms buy up and scale hospitals. Step 2. The insurance companies create these exclusive networks, often with those very same corporate chains. Step 3. Patients with insurance get funneled directly into these networks. And finally, Step 4. The hospitals, now with a captive audience, are pushed to maximize their billing, generating tons of revenue that keeps both the hospital management and its private equity owners very happy. It's a perfect closed loop. So let's put some names to the players here. On the private equity side, you've got firms like KKR and Blackstone. Their role? Pump billions into hospital chains to make them bigger and more profitable. And the consequence for you? The hospital essentially turns into an ATM for investors. Then you have the insurance giants, like Star Health or Niva Bupa. Their job is to push you into these network-based plans. And the consequence of that? Well, that promise of cashless care often turns into a nightmare of paperwork and denied claims. This profit-first partnership is creating these deep, systemic cracks across the entire healthcare landscape, and it's leading to widespread and often just devastating costs for everyone. 39 million. According to one study, that's how many Indians get pushed into deep poverty every single year because of what's called catastrophic health expenditure. And that's not just a statistic. It's the heartbreaking story of the cane cutter in Maharashtra who had to borrow money for his daughter's childbirth, lost both his daughter and his grandchild, and was still left with a crushing debt. It's millions of families being forced to sell their homes or take out huge loans just to pay a hospital bill. So where is all this investment money actually going? Well, a massive 68% of it is poured directly into the hospital segment, specifically into these high-margin, multi-specialty hospitals in big cities. Very little, by comparison, goes into things like pharmaceuticals or diagnostics. This massive concentration of money in just one area throws the whole system way off balance. And the direct result of that imbalance is this number: 43.6 kilometers. That's the average one-way distance a person in a rural area has to travel just to get admitted to a hospital. While all the money is pouring into shiny city hospitals, rural areas are left with clinics that are poorly equipped, creating what experts call a deep trust deficit in local healthcare. This has really created a tale of two Indias. But here's the truly crazy part. A recent study found that the urban poor can actually have worse health outcomes than people in rural areas. And you think, how is that possible? Well, they live in the shadow of these world-class hospitals, but the care is completely unaffordable. So they're trapped in these overcrowded areas with poor sanitation and a higher risk of disease. They're being exploited by their proximity to a system they can't even access. Now, if the problems of access and affordability weren't enough, this system is creating a massive crisis of ethics. 95%. Get this, that's the shocking percentage of hysterectomies done in private hospitals that a 2023 report found were medically unnecessary. This isn't just a simple difference of medical opinion. This is a systemic problem of overtreatment, and it's fueled by a model that rewards procedures over the actual well-being of the patient. And the ultimate result of all of this? A complete and total breakdown of trust. 63% of doctors now say they fear violence from patients and their families. When patients feel like they're being overcharged and underserved, and they see a system that just monetizes their vulnerability, that sacred trust between a doctor and a patient just evaporates. It leaves everyone in a tragic and really precarious position. And that brings us to the final, and maybe the most important conflict in this whole story. It's the one that plays out every single day inside the walls of these hospitals, the clash between a doctor's oath to heal and a corporation's demand to make a profit. And this pressure is put directly onto the doctors. As one paper puts it, doctors are no longer just independent professionals. They are employees who are given monthly targets for admissions, for tests, for prescriptions. Their salaries can literally depend on how much revenue they generate. This fundamentally changes the very nature of medicine. It turns healers into cogs in a giant financial machine. And you can see this conflict just boiling over everywhere. Even the government's safety nets are failing. Over 600 private hospitals have opted out of the huge Ayushman Bharat insurance scheme because the payments are too low and too slow. The cashless conflict between hospitals and insurers has led to threats of stopping services altogether, which could leave insured patients completely stranded. It all comes back to this one central tension. A hospital's duty to heal is now at war with its corporate mandate to make as much money as possible. Which leaves us with this final lingering question. It's the question that sits behind every statistic, every bill, and every personal story we've talked about today. When the main goal of a healthcare system shifts from the well-being of the patient to the returns for an investor, what ultimately happens to the patient?